Hi, my name is Tiffany Geisler, and I did my presentation at Alton Memorial Hospital in their OB unit. My preceptor was Jessica, and I came into the presentation when I asked her if there was anything that I could do, anything I could present to the staff, or anything that I could do for her that would be of any benefit with my research. And she handed me a pamphlet and said that she had been contacted by a vendor called Vapotherm, and they supplied the high flow nasal cannula, humidified high flow nasal cannula for infants, newborns, infants, children, and adults. And she is considering switching over from the nasal cannula or the nasal CPAP over to the high flow nasal cannula, the humidified high flow nasal cannula. She said that she just needed to kind of do some research and see which one was going to be better and see how her staff could hook it up, the process for hooking it up. And I told her that I would look into this. And so I did some evidence-based research, found some evidence-based research on the difference between the humidified high flow nasal cannula versus the CPAP. What my target audience was to be the nursing staff on the unit. I was not able to quite get all of the staff there because of their schedules at the day of the presentation, and because they just had a heavy caseload and patients delivering and things like that. So it ended up being the nurse educator and the nurse supervisor that were there, along with the preceptor, or along with the instructor. But in any case, the goal was to teach which one was going to be better and kind of the pros and cons of it, and just kind of some education with that. Whenever I looked at the research, I found that there was no difference between there wasn't much of a difference between the high flow nasal cannula and the CPAP. Basically, both of them worked about the same, and both of them provided the same benefit. There might have been a little bit better as far as the high flow in some regards and the CPAP in other regards, but overall there wasn't really much of a difference. One research article I did find that the patients that they found tended to be on the high flow nasal cannula about on average of 2 days longer than the CPAP. But every article, with the exception of maybe one, found that the high flow nasal cannula was very much preferred over the CPAP. Even if there was a longer stay, the nurses, the doctors, the patients, I guess in this case it would be the parents, all preferred the high flow nasal cannula over the CPAP. For newborns, it was very important, and on the OB unit, they stressed very much skin-to-skin contact between the mom and the baby, and the high flow nasal cannula would allow for the better skin-to-skin contact, quicker skin-to-skin contact, easier bottle feeds, less lesions to the nasal flares, to the nose, and also it would the noise level of the machine was a little bit worse on that one, and also the cost seemed to be higher on that one with the humidified high flow nasal cannula. Whenever I tried to look into the cost, I had a little bit of a harder time with the CPAP because there at the hospital they hook the CPAP up to the humidifier. When I looked into the cost of the high flow nasal cannula, I emailed the Vapotherm unit, or the Vapotherm company, and they contacted me back. I did email another company, but they never contacted me back. The Vapotherm unit is going to run about $3,700 for one machine, and then approximately $370, $380 for 5 cartridges. So if they go through about 30 patients a year that may use this, it was going to end up being I think over $6,000 a year, which in the grand scheme of things isn't horrible, but it was more than what they were putting out for the CPAP. I mean, it's a good chunk. In any case, I guess the overall thing of it that I found was that, like I said, the patients or the patients' families, the parents like it better, and the doctors and the nurses really, really like it better. I feel like they have better access to the patient. The smaller, the nasal cannula, it has to be, whenever you size it, it's 50%. The size is supposed to be 50%, half the size of the nares, of the diameter of the nares. So it made for it wasn't quite so bulky on the patient. The setup is really easy too. It doesn't take much to learn to set it up either, and the weaning process, increasing in the weaning, is similar to that of the CPAP as well. So overall, the presentation went fair. I presented with I stood in front of the educator and the supervisor. I had the pamphlet, from the Vapotherm, that I had kind of copied some of the more important pieces of the pamphlet out to kind of direct it to them. I did get the evaluation back. My goal for the presentation was that I would have at least 90% of those that I presented to would be able to name at least two things that were beneficial to the high flow nasal cannula, and they would be able to name at least one thing that was non-beneficial to the high flow nasal cannula. Also, that the nursing supervisor would be able to list at least one thing that she could do, or one way she could teach her nursing staff how to switch over from and change from the nasal cannula, or from the CPAP to the nasal cannula. I did hear back from the nursing supervisor, but I didn't hear back from the nursing educator that was there. So I didn't meet all of my goals, but that was because at that point it was because I did not get all the feedback. I was also at a disadvantage because I only had two nursing staff that was there because of the other nurses being in the otherwise engaged. If I were to do it over again, I would do a presentation with a PowerPoint. I was wishing that I would have done that, and either printed out the PowerPoint so that they had something in front of them, and something that would compare, like in columns that would compare the two, that was, I guess, more in writing, more concrete, more abstract more concrete for them to look at. But I think that some good things came out of it. It sounded like even with cost, that the nursing supervisor was talking about going from that she would possibly switch over to the Vapotherm. She said she felt like the nursing staff would be open to the change, and they would take it in stride. She could do some in-service, teach them how to hook it up, and that they could get this taken care of, and that it may be more beneficial for the patients, for the newborns, and for the parents, doctors, nurses, that they would all probably like it better. I did learn a lot through this class, as far as this presentation, and from the presentation and from the class. I learned that there are multiple ways to manage people, and manage staff. And I think I kind of pretty well figured out what kind of a manager I would be. I also realized that, especially through the presentation, that my findings, that sometimes even though something may cost more money, if in the long run the families or the patients or the nursing staff, but particularly the patients, their families are going to be happier, then that's kind of the way that you may want to lean. If it's within your power to do it, then and it's reasonable, then it's something that you want to consider, because when they're happy, then when the patients are happy or their families are happy, you've got happy staff, you've got happy doctors, your scores go up, and it brings in more revenue for the hospital or the facility. So sometimes, and in the long run, then you may end up actually ahead financially a little bit more, so because you've got happier people. I guess that's it, and I will also attach a copy of the handout that I had for the staff regarding the vapotherm. Thank you.